Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. And today we are going to be talking about the new Bioceramic Blancpain Swatch collaboration watches. Everyone else has already talked about them, so there's plenty of already existing content, but hey, makes for an easy Saturday live stream. And the way I'm going to do it is since it'll be the main focus of the entire episode, we'll actually walk through. I'll give some thoughts, and of course, look to the chat for thoughts and questions as well regarding sort of like where I think this is going to be in terms of for the consumers, what the possible effect this will have on Swatch, what the possible effect this will have on Blancpain, and that will probably walk us through almost all of this. We'll do a lot of cross comparison to the MoonSwatch because, of course, this is very much in that vein. But before getting started with that, while we get ready to go, while people start to connect who are actually watching live, and welcome everyone. I do see we have a few people already talking in chat. So good morning, Anson. Hope you are having a good start to your weekend. And Kevin as well. Hope things are well out in Florida. So in terms of just sort of channel updates that have been going on lately, I have put out a couple of videos this week. Oh, can you not hear me? Is that what you're saying? You can meaning can't. Let me check my settings real quick. I was messing with something earlier. Audio. All right. How is my audio volume? Let me know if I am okay or not okay. So in terms of actually, I guess I could check it with my own phone here. All right. Sounds like I'm okay now. Sorry, I clicked okay. I had hit a button earlier as well. I was seeing if I should manually adjust the gain or let it auto go because I was blowing out the mic on something else I did earlier, and so I was testing some settings and I did not set them all back to the way they were. In terms of things for the channel, a couple of videos out this week. I did a review. I did a review on a Moser Center Seconds Pioneer that came out a few days ago, and then a couple of days ago I went ahead and put out my 2023 State of the Collection video. I normally do that in November, or at least the last 2 years I've done it in November. I've only done it 3 times now. And so I figured because I had this last week, I wasn't working, and I'm starting a new job on Monday. I thought, I don't know how November is going to be, so let's go ahead and just do it now. Also, I'm not planning to buy any more watches this year. Of course, that, easier said than done, perhaps. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I do have that out, and I actually have another video that I worked on and up this week as well. That won't be out till November, so I won't say what it's about yet. But that one's in the can and ready to go. It will drop in the first half of November. So, with all that said, if you like this, always giving a like is the best way you can help out. If you want to be notified when I have videos, you can always click the subscribe button. I do have in the video description links to, and I've also put them in the chat, there's links to the Discord channel if you want to chat about watches like textually. That's what we use. And likewise, there is the 99-cent club if you would like to support the channel even further. So again, we will go ahead and we will move into the Swatch topic. I see Underhay is with us. Hello, Underhay. Hope things are going well. I see Tuna has joined us. Welcome, Tuna, to the live stream. And Anson says, on my morning walk, still can't understand why in LA, in this large market, I can't even attempt to get a Blancpain Swatch locally. Well, we will touch on that, though. No, since I live in the Midwest, I won't be giving you a good LA view of it per se. I've never been to Los Angeles. So what do I know about that market other than I hear there's a lot of sun out there. So congratulations on that. And hello, DeRosa. Welcome to the live stream. So before we go into the all breakdown of everything, I think the thing that makes the most sense, of course, is to go over the specifications, right? So links to these articles are in the show notes, but I've gone ahead and pulled up Hodinkee because they have a really nice summary at the end of their articles where they cover all of the basic information. So the Swatch, really quick, the Swatch Blancpain collaboration is known as the Scuba 50 Fathoms. That's the official name of it. There are 5 colorways. We'll look into those in more detail here in a moment, all themed around various oceans of the world. These run smaller than what I think of as the standard 50 fathoms. We're not talking the Bathyscap, the standard 50 fathoms. These are smaller. They're 42.3 millimeters in diameter, thickness of 14.4 millimeters. These are made of that plastic material that's referred to as bioceramic. It does have loom. They have actually water. I thought this was clever of them. I know some people called them out because they didn't like that it wasn't 100 meters of water resistance. It's 91 meters because that's 50 fathoms. So it is actually what it says on the tin. So kudos to them there. They are powered by the System 51 caliber movement. I didn't remember what this movement was. I had to look it back up. Back in the day, like was it 2013-ish or so? I think Hodinkee even has an article on this. This was I think the first mechanical movement that was entirely assembled by robots. And when they came out, they were kind of almost like hermetically sealed in the cases. And so they were throwaway mechanical movements. Now, they have since also come out with some metal, like System 51 metal. It might be the official name, where they're actually designed. None of the movements are designed to be serviced. However, they do have versions of the movement that are designed to be drop in, drop out. So if the movement goes bad, you could drop a movement into the watch, a new movement. I'm not entirely clear yet on these. This looks to be the traditional design, especially given the color, like 3D printing of the movement. So I'm assuming that these are not swappable. The case does make it look like maybe it could be opened up, but normally with the regular plastic-based System 51, so those movements are never to be exposed to air again after they're sealed. So I'm assuming no, that they're not serviceable. However, I haven't seen a clear answer on it. So I just wanted to go ahead and note that now. Anyway, 3 hertz movement, 90 hours of power reserve. It is an automatic winding movement, and these are equipped with NATO straps. Now, the pricing on these watches, the availability is as of today. I've already seen photos purportedly. I didn't verify them. Photos purportedly of lines outside of Swatch stores with people trying to get them. $400 US, a little bit different in terms of euro and pounds. And they are not limited. However, they are only at Swatch physical locations. And as was noted by Anson in the chat, not at all of the Swatch locations. So only certain locations actually do have them. So that's the basic summary about what's going on with the technology and the size and specifications of these watches. Now, as Tuna has noted, System 51 is an amazing piece of tech. I wasn't into watch collecting when that movement came out, but I did read the article well before this piece came out. Once I finally saw it again, I was like, oh, okay, that's the movement. Because I remember a lot of people were really excited about the idea of a mechanical movement that could be completely automated in terms of its construction, because the whole idea at the time, and this was before smartwatches really took off when this came out, was would this get more people into mechanical watches? Because if you could put a mechanical movement together so cheap, maybe that meant it would be more accessible, is the idea. And I do think when you look at Swatch's site with the System 51, there are a lot of very accessible prices available on watches. Not this, and we'll get into that. $400 is not a typical Swatch price. But that is the basic idea. So, as DeRosa has said, since the 51 movement is a known thing, how is the reputation for longevity? I've read a little bit on that, DeRosa, and it varies. I've seen, like, anecdotally, I don't know if there's a good analysis on it. Anecdotally, I've seen some people say that they've never, like, they still have one and it still works, and they've obviously, there are some at this point that have reached, I believe, a decade in age. And then there are others who have had bad luck with them and have said the movements have failed within 3 years. So in theory, it's not supposed to need a lot of, it's not designed for maintenance, but in theory, the way they put it together, it's supposed to minimize wear, and it's supposed to, I thought they had promoted that these watches were expected to go over a decade, but I don't know if that was ever an official blessing thing that Swatch said about the movement, but I know a lot of people speculated that in theory, with how they put it all together, the idea of it being able to last for 10 years, 10, 15 years before you would expect it to fail seemed to be kind of where it was at when it launched. But again, I've not researched to see if someone's done a true analysis to see how well they hold up. And Ken has joined, and Ken is a 99 Cent Club member. We do thank you for that, Ken. We being me, because there's only me. And noted that white and blue seem to be the hot colors. And I would agree. So let's go ahead and let's hop over. Now, instead of looking at the Hodinkee article, I'm going to load up the Blog to Watch site, because I love how much I can blow the pictures up when I do the screen share. So, and the blue and the white are my favorites as well. So this is the This is the white version with gray. I believe this is what it's either the Arctic or the Antarctic. I'm not going to keep these names straight, so I apologize. So there's that one. Let me go back to it really briefly. There are two different dial configurations. Colors are what are going to catch everyone's mind. And I think that was in no way a surprise. This is exactly what I expected when I heard that Swatch was going to do a collaboration with Blancpain. It had to be the 50 Fathoms. No other watch makes sense. It's the only well-known watch that Blancpain has. And that's saying something, because Blancpain is no Omega. We'll get into that. But so this is that configuration. However, you'll notice as I go through these, those of you who are watching or have screens big enough to be able to see it, they did two different dial approaches. And I don't mean the big stuff like the rad meter or the water detection meter. There are two formats. So the white version, for example, this is the old style 50 Fathoms look. Some of them are using the current collection and some of them are using the older model look. The older model look is not out of production per se. I think they still use it for limited editions and stuff. But this one with like the round and rectangular, sort of what you might think of normally with a dive watch, that's the old style. So this white one uses the old style. I think this is supposed to be a moisture monitor. I imagine it doesn't actually function, but it's something that is a true throwback to something that Blancpain has done before. Then we have this orange one. Again, I don't remember which ocean this one represents. Same old format. This one, though, I think this one will be popular with a number of people, even though it's not the most popular colorway because it's kind of brown and orange. But the no rad is, I'd say, the most famous dial artifact that Blancpain has. And in fact, they have a current version of the watch. Can't remember if it's limited or not, but they've been releasing modern versions with the no rad indicator because it was a popular throwback. So for those interested in the history of it, I'll opine really quick on it. That was something that they put on the dials when they were moving away from radium. So radium has a lot of health risks because it's radioactive. So they put the no rad indicator on it. However, I believe they moved to tritium, which is also radioactive. However, it doesn't penetrate the skin. So in a way, it's sort of funny. It's like, no, tritium's still radioactive. I'm assuming that's what they jumped to because that's what everyone used between radium and superluminova and the other modern looms that actually get charged. So, but tritium far more safe as long as you don't eat it, pretty much, is my understanding. And in fact, tritium is still used today. Though at this point, because it is radioactive, you always see it contained in tubes, not painted on anymore. But anyway, fun little aside, I think. But otherwise, the old-fashioned dial configuration as well. So here's the blue one. This, I believe, is the Atlantic Ocean. Notice now the dial architecture is different. This is the modern 50 Fathoms look. So if you go back to the prior ones, you can see where they have 50 Fathoms up at the top here. Same with the white, the old, with the Blancpain, the 50 Fathoms in the script. On the modern look, we don't have the circles and circles and rectangles anymore for the markers. They're these pointed triangle teeth looking ones. So you've got that, and the 50 Fathoms script is bumped down to the bottom. This is what most of the modern collection looks like from Blancpain. So anyway, this one I would say, as Ken had noted, the blue and the white. I bet this is overall the most popular one. I think blue. It's a safe color to do with watches, right? So so going ahead and doing that here, I think this will be the one that is in the most demand. Clean dial configuration. I'm sure some people are going to hate the 4:30 date window, but again, that's something we see on Blancpain. So I mean, that's actually pretty accurate. Though these two older ones that we already looked at don't actually use the date window at all. So again, it'll depend what you're into, but we got the blue one. Indian Ocean, I know, is the green one. Probably I'm going to guess it's going to be the least popular one. In part, not so much that green is polarizing, but I think this shade of green is. I just think it's not going to work as well for a lot of people. Modern dial design, again, 4:30 date window as well. So basically the same configuration as the blue, just a different color scheme. And the fifth and final one, again, the modern dial design, yellow, bumblebee. We'll say this is the bumblebee look with the sort of gradient white or gray dial configuration. Again, it's just a different colorway. Otherwise, it's completely following all the modern tropes that the Atlantic one did as well. So what is this? This might be the Pacific, would be my guess. But so those are the five. So you've got 3 date versions following the modern aesthetic, and then you've got 2 that are using the older style look and do something creative, either the no rad indicator or the moisture penetration indicator. So overall, weighing in at this point about the aesthetics of these watches, I think they look pretty good. Which colors are better are going to be things people are going to debate about. As I agree with Ken, I think the blue is going to be popular and the white is going to be popular. I think it's going to fall off dramatically from there, with green being the very bottom of it. If I was going to go ahead and rank the order, I think the order of popularity is going to be blue, followed by white, followed by orange, followed by yellow, and green last. That's my guess. And the reason why I think orange would probably lose to this black and yellow bumblebee color scheme, but the no rad thing's going to push it up in popularity. So that's my interpretation on these. Now in terms of the colorways, what's the logic of the colorways? I didn't think they're going to make a logic for the colorways. Quite frankly, my assumption was Swatch was just going to say, well, we're Swatch, and that's what we did with the MoonSwatch. And I always assumed they would be bright colors because that's what they do. What they've done, though, is and there's a technical term that I'm not bothering to remember. Someone can share it in chat. They're each colored around a sea slug. So on the back, here's the movement. Here's the System 51. So you can see where how they do the 3D printing. That's why you have all this sort of art on the bridges. And then each one has a sea slug, and the sea slugs, I guess, live in each of these oceans. So they take a sea slug from one of the oceans and they use it as the inspiration for the color. And then they also put the sea slug on the back of the watch. I guess since they're using the sea slugs, you might as well. I thought this was weird. I guess they're cute. But who cares what's on the back of the watch, quite frankly. So say there's this sea slug. He's a little orange sea slug, and then there's the blue one. They have different shapes too. I mean, they are actual creatures. So you can go and look. Like the green one looks cool. It's too bad. I think they should have done a darker green on this watch, but whatever. It's not up to me. So that's the inspiration for the colorways according to Swatch. So that's where that all stands. I'm going to go ahead really quick and catch up on the chat, and then we will move into kind of the analysis of what I think's going on with the strategy here. So let's see I see a lot of interdiscussion here. Let's see. Cloud thinks white probably over blue, but they didn't want to cannibalize themselves, so no black. Okay. The white, I prefer the white to the blue myself. Like the moisture indicator, I think is pretty good, but I think more people prefer blue watches to white. So I'm going to still stick with my prediction that blue will do the best overall. Be interesting if I don't think Swatch will ever tell us. It would be interesting though if they would tell us which colors do the best. Underhay says, pretty sure the 50 Fathoms was on sale before the Submariner. It's a debated thing. However, most of the information I have seen seems to suggest that yes. If I were to guess, I believe the 50 Fathoms hit market first before the Submariner. However, the 50 Fathoms, the Rolex Submariner, and the Zodiac Seawolf all came out at about the same time. So it's kind of like who made the first automatic winding chronograph, right? Was it Zenith? Was it the collaboration with Breitling? Was it Seiko? That one we actually know a little bit better. That one gets that one's interesting because they start mincing a little bit more because there's differences between who developed it first and who got it to market first. So that one though, I think there's better dates. I don't know if it's unknown between the 50 Fathom Submariner and the Seawolf, but those three are the first like dive watches. So, and it's really interesting to me because Blancpain is at the highest end of the kind of like, if you were to look at retail luxury pricing evaluation, well, it doesn't even have to be luxury pricing, but pricing evaluation, it would suggest that the 50 Fathoms is the most luxurious of the three, followed very closely by Rolex, which isn't all that much off of the price point. I think there's about a $5,000 delta depending on the models. And then Seawolf, our Super Seawolf today, is way, way low, between the $1,000 and $2,000 price point. But all these watch brands have gone through very different iterations, or I should say, very different histories, like in terms of how the brands and their health has been, especially surviving the quartz crisis. Whereas Rolex navigated it very well. Blancpain and Zenith Zodiac did not. So very, very sort of very, very sort of different things going on there. So Koji says, the sea slug, how lovely. Yeah, they're using the, like, there's a technical, well, let's find it. There's a technical term for them, but they're sea slugs. That's what I think that's the layperson term, is sea slugs. They're like called nudo somethings, but it makes them sound like little nudist things. I don't remember. I don't know if this article even says what they are. Surely it does, right, guys? It's got to say, right? I don't want to spend the whole time surfing for a word that I can't remember. But anyway, yes, sea slugs. I mean, I got to admit, it's pretty creative that they didn't go like stingrays and sharks and stuff. But they, it was weird. Neff says, everyone's favorite sea creature, sea slugs, whales, sharks, forget about those. The slugs are real fun. Neff, everyone does sharks and whales. All right, maybe not whales. Everyone does sharks. There's sharks all the time. We don't want more sharks. And Tuna says, I simply can't get with this whale. Sorry, I'm still on whale speak. This whole Omega Blancpain debacle. As a cheap plastic fun watch, Swatch have always had a cachet of their own. Yeah, new to branch. Thank you, Neff. Thank you. Saved myself from myself. So I'll throw up some other images here where we talk a little bit about the watches and the strategy, because you segue it quite well, actually, Tuna, about the, like, is it a debacle? Is it smart business? What's the goal here? It depends a lot. Ken says, nice case back, but it's covered with the NATO strap. But the nice thing is, I'm assuming we can change those out. I don't, like, what is this? Is this a standard lug? No one advertised the lug width. I checked several articles and I could not find the lug width on these. So maybe all we could do is change them. I mean, if those are fixed spring bars, then I guess all we're doing is NATOs. We could change them to new NATOs, but I guess all we're doing is NATOs, which is, I guess, kind of unfortunate. Not kind of. All right. It's unfortunate in the sense that I think you should be able to change the straps out. So I'm hoping you're able to. That being said, I think these NATOs look and will probably be I've had plenty of cheap NATOs. They're better than whatever Swatch did with the MoonSwatch. That strap was an abomination. So the decision to go with cheap NATOs is probably better from a, like, just default boilerplate hardware. But there are plenty of reasons to not want it to stay on a NATO, even if you like the NATO in terms of how it looks, like, aesthetically. And Ken points out a good one. Like, it adds to the thickness. That's one of the reasons why, like, I didn't mention today, I am wearing, and I don't have a Blancpain. So I'm wearing Omega, but I don't have a MoonWatch either. So this is my Omega Seamaster. And I have it on a, what is this? One of those Barton Elite silicone straps. I had it on a NATO at one point. It adds so much thickness, and these are already thick. These coaxial watches are thick. So I'm like, I ain't keeping it on the NATO. It's too thick. So yeah, there's plenty of reason to want to go ahead and switch it. And Neff notes, my only concern is, where does this end? With a Swatch and Breguet tradition collaboration? I don't know. I don't think it ends, but let's go ahead and talk about, I think there are three angles we need to consider this collaboration. What's the collaboration going to do for Blancpain? What's the collaboration going to do for Swatch? And what's the collaboration going to do for the consumer? I think those are the three main areas to go ahead and focus on. And so let's talk about the Blancpain angle first. So in terms of where it's all at, and I do have a link in the description if you want to actually go to Swatch's website to look at them, because they're in store only. I should have noted that as well. The $400, they're only, oh no, I did mention that they're not even in all the stores, they're in some stores, which is similar to what they did with the MoonSwatch. So here's the thing about it. So as Tuna notes, a plastic swatch is a swatch, a Blancpain is a Blancpain, and the twain and never the twain should meet. DeRosa says, it appears there are huge lines for people being reported ahead of the launch today, and both are true. So here's where I want to start. I want to go ahead and start with Blancpain. So when the MoonSwatch came out, a lot of people were like, okay, well, it's a big hit for Swatch. There were reports that the people who worked at Omega were not, I mean, obviously, they're not a monolith. They all probably had their own views. But there were reports that there were higher ups at Omega that were not pleased that Swatch Group greenlit that and said that they could take the MoonWatch and take it and Swatchify it and make a MoonSwatch, and that Omega didn't love, at least some of the people at Omega did not love that their name was on a Swatch's dial. But according to Swatch Group, and I believe it's probably several articles. I can't remember which. I think it was, I was going to load it up today, and I thought no one, if you want, Google is your friend if you care enough. I think Hodinkee was the one I remember. But according to Swatch Group, they saw a 50% spike in MoonWatch sales, Omega MoonWatch sales, in the wake of the MoonSwatch being available or not available, given how hard it was to actually acquire. So one might argue that Swatch thinks this is going to do something to that effect for Blancpain. And I think there may be some effect, but I don't think it's going to be remotely along the lines of what we saw with the MoonWatch. Because here's the main thing, and I kind of opened with this. People don't know who Blancpain is as a brand. People, as in the general public, don't know Blancpain. If you're old enough, maybe you remember when the 50 Fathoms came out. But, I mean, that was like around a couple of years, like after my dad was born. It's not a current thing. Like if you're a watch collector, it's different, right? But if you're a watch collector, you already knew about Blancpain, right? So you're already making the decision. Can you afford one? Do you want to afford one? Would you like to have an homage or something in that vein? I don't know if they're already, I don't want to say clones, but homages. Like, I mean, again, I've not seen a lot like that. It's a good shape, but there's a reason why you see all these other watch brands that come out with versions that look like the Submariner, because the Submariner is so popular. So my point being that the MoonWatch was and is in a totally different space. People, the general public is very familiar with the shape of the MoonWatch. So when the MoonSwatch came out, I think it did two things. One, I think some people got it and then thought, you know what? I really like how this watch looks. I want to get the luxury version. And I think there were other people that couldn't get the MoonSwatch, but then were reminded by it coming out and getting all this press and all this hype and all this attention. And they go, you know what? They started looking online. They're like, I can get a MoonWatch. I don't have to wait in line for a MoonSwatch. I'll just buy the real thing. And so I think that's where I was really surprised at their report that it was 50%. I honestly, I know I had a video back in the day on that. And my prediction was it would help Omega, but I thought that was going to be a long tail. I thought it's going to be like 20 somethings who bought MoonSwatches. I mean, a lot of people were going to buy MoonSwatches, but like, I'm thinking really specific people who were not in a age bracket yet to reasonably have the money to go and buy luxury watches would have MoonSwatches, and then in a decade would have fondness and memories of that, and then they would buy MoonWatches in their 30s. That's how I thought it would play out. And maybe it still will, but obviously it played out a lot faster to the Swatch Group's benefit and Omega's benefit than that happened in my timeline's mentality. But as I noted, Blancpain is not Omega, and the 50 Fathoms is not the MoonWatch. It just doesn't have that same cachet with the general public. The other problem is the price. So, and I don't mean the price of the $400 price of the Scuba, the Swatch, the 50-cent Fathom, or however we want to call it. It's the price delta between the MoonWatch and the 50 Fathoms. It's very, very different. So I did go ahead and I'm going to use watch charts here. So here are, and the reason I'm going and using this is because we can see retail prices as well. Now, granted, some of these, if it's a discontinued watch, you're going to see the retail price for when the watch was discontinued. So not every model line is around. But here's the thing. Modern 50 Fathoms watches generally start retail at $15,000. Ignore you gotta ignore these bathyscaps, because the bathyscap is not a design choice that Swatch is used. They're using the straight up huge 50 Fathoms, not the bathyscap. So the apples to apples is looking at the full size 50 Fathoms. So you see here, like the 5015, 15,500, the 5200, 17,200, this is a moon phase one. I don't even know if I want to, I don't even know if I want to show that one, but anyway, so here's another 5015 at 18,200 is the retail. Now, it's Blancpain. like most watch brands, these take a bath used. You can find these gray and you can find these used. And that's where these market prices come into play. But notice what these market prices are. This $15,500 watch is $9,100. This $17,001 is $10,700. This $18,001 is $11,000. So you see, we're almost all of these non-Bathyscap ones are still 5 figures even used. We get down to about 9,000. That's like the cheapest. Let's talk about Speedmaster moon watches, okay? Setting the Snoopy aside, totally different ballpark. We're talking retail prices of modern ones. The main ones on their current collection are like $6,600 to $8,000 retail. But these take a bath secondhand too, because there's so many of them. So we're talking watches that are sold at $8,000 go for just over $6,000 in the market. And you have a huge back catalog of very samey looking watches, because kind of like Rolex and the Submariner, Omega knows not to mess with the DNA too much on the MoonWatch. So it always kind of looks the same. So you can go ahead and go around and find them for between $4,000 and $5,000. So what is all my word salad? I realize I'm not sharing the screen all of a sudden. I'm sorry. I should have looked. So here's the numbers that I was talking about with the Blancpains. And again, these are the Bathyscaps we don't count, because that's not what is being homaged here with Swatch. We're looking at these full size, the true 50 fathoms, the more textual ones, the big boys. So that's where I'm talking about these retails like 15, 17, 18, going for 9 to 11, 9 to 12,000. And then we talk moon watches, 8,000. And I went to the website earlier, Omega's 6,600 to 8,000, Hezolite versus Sapphire Sandwich, all that sort of stuff. But you see the market prices, this is a Snoopy. We don't count that. We don't count that one. 6,000, 4,500, 5,200, 4,000. You can find moon watches for like 4,500 to 8,000 if you want to go ahead and get it retail. So back to where I was going to say, and my passionate word salad thing. So what do I mean with my word salad is setting aside the initial starting point on the Swatch Blancpain versus the Swatch Omega. It's a lot more money to jump into a 50 fathoms than it is to jump into a MoonWatch. They made less of them. They sell for more initially. It's just, so I don't think we see a 50% surge. And look at all. I don't think Swatch is going to say in half a year to their investors, "Hey, look, we saw a 50% uptick in our 50 fathom sales." I was like, no, because there are plenty of people that might have been able to go into a store and buy a $7,000 MoonWatch who cannot walk into a store and buy a $15,000 50 fathoms. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think there's a single, including the Bathyscaps, I don't think there's a single in production 50 fathoms from Blancpain that retails 4 figures. I think they're all over 10,000 US. So will they see an uptick? I do think they will. I don't think it's going to be remotely close to the 50% they saw on the MoonSwatch. Remotely. I'm going to say I don't even think it's 10%. I don't think it's double digit. I just don't think I think it's too niche of a watch, and it's way too expensive. And so some people will probably look online and look used and look gray, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's so much more than a MoonWatch." Anyway. So that's kind of where I'm coming from there. So let me go in. I know I've fallen behind on chat, so I'll go ahead and catch up on that really quick. Neff says, "I would be very curious to see how many people in the lines are going from a $400 Swatch to a $12,000 Blancpain. I'm sure there's so many there." I think you meant to say it really snarky. Yeah. So that was much more efficient than my rant, but I have to pad out this live stream. So that exactly. It's way more. And that's where, like, when the question earlier in the chat where someone had mentioned, I think it was you, Neff, about the Swatch Breguet, like they do a Breguet. I mean, what's the cheapest Breguet at this point? It's the Type 20, right? And the new ones are like almost $20,000. It's the ability to benefit the brand that is subservient to Swatch on the dial is getting less and less as they move, especially if they move up in the tiers. And remember, Blancpain is higher in the Swatch group triangle. They have a hierarchy. It's not like Richemont where they have multiple groups sharing in the sort of same luxury space. Every I'm typing right now because I'm going to load you up the branding, because you can actually, they show it. They used to have it really clearly spelled out in their tier list, but they still lay it out this way on their website. So here, let me take the cookies. So here's the watches and jewelry brands by Swatch. Let me get it so you can see all of them and my face not be in the way. This is their order. This is number 1. This is last. So Swatch is their second. Flick Flack is a children's brand. So you see, in the world of Swatch, it's all very, very clear. Tissot is a higher quality brand in Swatch's opinion than Hamilton, and they position their watches that way. Rado is above Tissot, but it's below Longines. Blancpain is near the very top of their pyramid, above Omega. Omega they put above Longines, and then below like Jacquet Draws and some of these other things. Like Leon Hutot is not even in production right now. But like Geo, so I could see a Geo collaboration being considered, and Breguet is the crown jewel of their pyramid. That's Swatch. This is Swatch's ranking, not mine. This is how Swatch sees it. So they try and that's where they structure everyone, and everyone's in these very particular sort of tiers. The pricing, of course, starts to vary a bit when you take a big brand like Omega, where they do have $500,000 watches, but they don't sell very many of those. They have their sweet spot, and in that world, they view. I mean, if you look at a Geo, a Glashütte Original, you're going to see like hand finishing on the movements and stuff. You don't see that on Omega. Omega decorates their movements, but the machine decorate them. And then Breguet, you're starting to get into like every dial is got hand engine rose turned guilloche and all that stuff. It's just anyway. So the problem is, letting people have the taste of it through Swatch does not translate to them being able to actually get that, like, is like a trial version. Like I want to buy the demo of the 50 Fathoms, right? That's kind of like, am I buying the demo? Aesthetically, you kind of are. I mean, it's the same basic shape and dial configuration, but a lot of these people can't make this jump, just can't do it. Or even if they could financially, they won't. Like, I mean, not everyone is as goofy as me and is going to go out and buy, a couple luxury watches in a year. Most people won't even do that like in their lifetime. They'll buy one, maybe. It's just different. So anyway, yeah, that's why I don't see a huge amount of upside to Blancpain for this. I don't really see downside either, though. People can argue if it cheapens the brand or whatever. I just don't think so. I don't think we saw any long-term, obviously sales-wise, we didn't see damage to Omega because of the MoonSwatch. I don't think this damages Blancpain in any way. I just don't think they can expect to see the same dividends for them as a division of Swatch Group that Omega got to see. And part of that is just Blancpain's too expensive. Blancpain's too unknown. And the 50 Fathoms is no MoonWatch. Even though I personally prefer the 50 Fathoms far over a MoonWatch in terms of aesthetics. We're literally just aesthetics, but also the finishing and everything else along with it. So Koji asks, any guesses as to how much flippers will charge? $1,500. I already saw a post today where someone had it up and they've been getting listed closer to 1,000 from what I saw. Zavish, welcome to livestream. Zavish said around $600. Koji, okay. I only saw a couple images too, so I think it's still fair to guess. I think a lot of those people in line are speculated to be flippers. So, and that's not surprising either, really, though, is it? I think a lot of people would just go and say, hey, I remember the MoonSwatch thing did really well, and people spent, $1,000 to $2,000 in those first couple of months on eBay for them. So let's go ahead and try it again. With them as flippers not knowing anything about watches and thinking that's going to still be the case here, whereas I'm not sure it's going to be. Actually, that sounds too hedgy. Let me be more assertive. It will not be as profitable as the MoonSwatch was for flippers for twofold reasons. One, not nearly as popular of a design. And second, again, early information, but it seems like Swatch, Omega would be mad about that. Swatch seems to be doing a lot better about having more supply available. And I don't know if that's just because they're selling fewer of them overall because it's $400 per pop and they're making a rule, one watch, one store per day, or if it's just that they actually built a lot more to be ready for the demand. But I heard someone report that they went somewhere and they were out and then they bought they went and bought a Cartier and then they went back and Swatch later that day, I guess earlier today or yesterday, I don't remember I don't think they were in the US, had more of them. They got another shipment in already within 24 hours. So lot better positioning there. Neff says there are many 50 Fathoms homages. So given that, I think a lot of people, that will probably be what benefits. Is some people will look and see this $400 price point and start looking around, and they find those 50 Fathom homages. They might be like, you know what? I'd rather have a serviceable metal watch for X amount versus that, or they get the Swatch version and they're like, you know what? I liked it, but I don't want it to be plastic anymore. And I can't justify spending over $9,000 on a used Blancpain. So they go and they grab an homage instead. So Scotty, welcome to the live stream. Scotty says, I think it's marketing genius. They are playing the long game. My young adult kids know about these. Someday they will want a proper watch, and they know these brands now. From a consumer, I wasn't going to get to the consumer perspective quite yet, but yeah, it's not. I don't see it as a negative. I know in the way some people do. And in the way that maybe how I've reacted before to some of like that fashion watch thing that Audemars Piguet came out with just recently, where I did feel it cheapened the brand, and I could understand how people felt. I'm picking on Audemars Piguet. Felt that way about the Spider-Man and the Black Panther watches, high horology, Holy Trinity brand doing Marvel collaborations. The difference here is Swatch's name is on this watch, and Swatch watches are supposed to be cheap and fun. And we can argue if it's cheap enough, but otherwise it's a fun piece of plastic. So again, it doesn't tarnish Blancpain's name. I don't think it pays the same dividends as we saw with MoonSwatch, but it may pay some dividends. So something to note there. So let's see. Oh yes, my 50-cent joke. Yes. I've used it twice now, so I definitely need to quit drawing from that well, especially since it ended up priced a little bit higher than but think of how, that would have been really cheeky, right? Though, if Swatch had just called it the Swatch 50 centums or something, but they didn't. Underhay says, I wonder whether this will actually work better for Blancpain. They are so low profile. I think they're probably people saving and waiting for a Submariner who don't know the 50 Fathoms exists. That is a very fair point that I did not touch on. It will assuredly raise Blancpain's profile with the general public, but currently the profile is basically non-existent. The thing that I think hurts the conversion rate on it is the price point is so high. And I know it's so tough because, Moon watches are not cheap. They are luxury watches. You spend, even go buy like an old used one, you're going to probably spend, even for like a reduced, you're probably going to spend a couple $1,000s. So I don't want to dismiss it. But, and this happens again in my other hobby in pinball, people lose those of us who collect or have been in the hobby a while, we lose the plot a lot. And I think watch people do too. We forget that there's a difference. Like it starts to be the point of, well, if you'll pay $5,000, then you'll pay $7,000. And if you pay $7,000, of course you'll pay $9,000. If you'll pay $9,000, you'll pay $15,000. At some point, there's a line. The old Picard line must be drawn here. Thing comes into play. And Blancpain's really expensive. So we'll see. I think the initial result will probably be a lot of people in the short term will scoop up gray and used, and then we'll see long term if that's enough to change things. If it's not enough to stop the flow to the gray market, like Joma Shop's full of Blancpains. You can get unworn gray market Blancpains pretty easily for thousands less than retail. So we'll see if that supply dries up first before it really makes a difference to the brand itself. There's potential, but I just think they're too priced highly for a lot of people. You have to love, like you have to either be into watch collecting or you have to love this watch to be willing to do it. And the thing is, again, are you the sort of person who's willing to go and pay the gray market price, the market price for a Rolex Submariner? Or are you someone like me who would be like, oh yeah, I'll get it if I can get it at the authorized dealer, and I won't buy gray because it goes for more? Because the Rolex Submariner at retail is $15,000 less than the Blancpain. So it's just, it's just something to bear in mind. Neff says, my guess is Swatch needs the money. They have total control and they're okay with cannibalizing their own icons. They're going to the stores. It sounds to me like they really needed the traffic. That is excellent point. Thank you, Neff. You're transitioning me back to my next part that I planned for the discussion. But the chat's been really active, and I've been pleased with that. So thank you, everyone, for all your comments and questions so far. So I already talked about what I thought this means for Blancpain. So what does this mean for Swatch? It means a lot for them. It means a lot, and I think they think they've discovered a formula here that they're going to push, and I do think this will do more for Swatch than it will do for Blancpain. So the key thing here is, if you remember back, those of you who followed the MoonSwatch hype, originally, the MoonSwatch was supposed to be available online. It was only going to be initially sold at some very, very few retailers. And it was going to be available online, and folks were going to be able to go and order them. And then there were the lines, there were the flippers, there was the eBay thing. And so Swatch changed the strategy. They did expand where you could get it. They started putting it in more and more stores. They started doing like some mobile, like the Oscar Mayer Wiener Mobile, I guess. And they were going around with like, I don't know, I guess it didn't look like a Wiener Mobile, but they should have done a Wiener Mobile. It would have been funnier. And then they, were selling them out of the trunk of some, like, I don't know, Mini Coopers or whatever they were doing. So they've made some changes to the strategy, but it still requires you to go retail. And that's the key thing that Swatch wants. Obviously, they want to sell a lot of watches. They sold over 1 million, I think they reported, within a year of the MoonSwatch. And I'm sure they're hoping for, they have to know they're not going to sell 1 million of these, simply for no other reason than the fact that this one is twice the price as the MoonSwatch. It's a $400 watch, not $200. So that makes a big difference. But the number of watches, I think, is secondary to what I believe is Swatch's main goal, which is their retail units are struggling. And it only makes sense. More and more shopping takes place online, especially when you consider what is the typical Swatch watch price point. It's under 200, right? It's like, I don't know if it's under 100, but think somewhere 200 and less for most of the Swatch models. At that price point, plenty of people are willing to just order it online and take a chance. And if they don't like it, they'll give it away, or they'll sell it on eBay as a minor loss, or whatever, or return it if there's a return policy. It's no big deal. I mean, we're at the point where we buy luxury watches, try them on, and the stores will let us send it, leave a little tag on it. And if you don't like it, just send it right back. They get it. We don't all live near, I don't live near a Zenith dealer. I live in the Kansas City area, and I have a Rolex AD. I've got an Omega AD. I can go try on a Patek Philippe. I can't try on a Vacheron. Can't try on a Moser. I can't try on a Zenith. I have to order them. I'm not driving 8 hours to Chicago or Dallas to try a watch on. So I order them. And a lot of people do. At this point, we're used to online shopping. So Swatch has these retail stores, and there hasn't been a good reason to go into them. Honestly, there probably hasn't been a good reason to go into them for at least a decade. But post-pandemic, that has been a lodestone on the balance sheets of the Swatch Group, those retail outlets. It's like, why do we have these? Why do we have all this? Why are we paying rent? Why do we have all these leases? Why do we have all this real estate and these employees for our second to Flick Flack, lowest tier item in our entire group's collective infrastructure of timepieces and jewelry? And people they don't shop that way anymore. So how do you fix it? Well, one strategy would be you can close those stores and save the money. That's probably what someone like me would. That'd be what like a venture capital group would probably come in and do. But here's another strategy you could do. You make people go to the store. And that's what Swatch has been doing. And it worked with the MoonSwatch. So they're hoping they strike gold again. They know it won't be the same. I mean, it's selling for more money. They don't need to sell as many units. That will help on the production side. So here's a great reason to go. I mean, some people are saying, they went with the System 51 movement that you see on the screen here because Blancpain has a policy, like since the Jean-Claude Biver days, of they will never make a quartz watch. But this isn't a Blancpain. They could have done quartz as Swatch. And maybe there've been some grousing, but those same people are going to be the people that are grousing that it cheapens the brand. I think those are one and the same person. I don't think there's a dividing line for everyone where something crosses it. So there are probably a few people that the quartz would have been a bridge too far. I think the whole reason that this is an automatic is actually to excuse the higher price point and help reduce the need to build as many because they don't want to run into the same problem. I think it was a safety measure to make sure that they could keep up with production this time, which is smart. People don't want to wait. Swatch doesn't want these to sell for 1,000 on eBay. They want you to come in and buy it from them at 400. Absolutely. So, but they're still making you go to the store. It's to prop up the stores. And I think it will work. I think it obviously worked with MoonSwatch. I think it will work here. And that's why I don't think this is the end of this. Now, I don't know if I go, full on with Neff and jump immediately to the next thing is a Breguet collaboration. But there's no reason they couldn't revisit the Omega well and do a Seamaster. In fact, maybe it was the grousing within Omega where they're like, fine, we'll do Blancpain. I think they want to see, I think also the experiment. I think they want to see, as was noted in the chat before from some of you, that will this help Blancpain out? Because if so, maybe you take the chance and you do Geo. Glashütte original. You want to talk about a brand that a lot of Americans don't know, Glashütte? I mean, a German brand, but could they do some weird swatchification of the Pano line or a Senator or something? I mean, I don't know, because we're getting to brands that don't have an icon that there's still a portion of the public that isn't into watches that might know the 50 Fathoms. They don't know a Breguet, do they? The Type 20 is probably the most famous, and that ain't saying much. The most famous thing about the Breguet is the numerals and the handset, and it's not a brand, it's not a model of the watch. Same with Geo. Most Americans, at least, don't know Glashütte Original. Why would they? So, but you could do all sort of things like, and again, it doesn't even have to be higher up the tier above Omega. They could swatchify a Tissot. You would almost ask, why would you, when you can get a PRX quartz for $400? So that was probably a bit of a stretch, but Longines, Rado, a Swatch Captain Cook. I don't know, but there are so many things there. Here's the key though. I think the key is they're going to keep making us come to the store to buy them. That wasn't the initial strategy. The initial strategy was to sell watches so Swatch could sell watches, but now they have realized as long as there's still demand, as long as there's going to be a line on opening day, at least for the short term, that at least for a portion, the early days of the sale of each of these, they're going to make it retail exclusive. It's the only thing that's making those buildings make financial sense to them. So that's why I think they're doing it that way. So I do think that, and I think it's going to work. So while I think there are a lot of questions about if this really helps Blancpain out, I do think this definitely helps Swatch. And it's giving an excuse for why they continue to have a retail space and it's actual watch models that people, I mean, look at, I got like 17 people in the chat right now, which is a lot for my channel. And here I am spending an entire day talking about a brand I've never owned. Swatch or Blancpain. So it's like, it's working. We're talking about it. So yes, I definitely think this is a well they are going to continue to go back to. Maybe once we don't see the lines form, I think they'll still do these collabs, intra Swatch group collabs, but I think they'll reevaluate this approach. But currently, the retail store thing it's a big deal to them. They're trying to save those retail stores, and this is working, so they're going to keep doing it. Okay, lots and lots of chat. So I will try. I'm going to scroll back up. I apologize, but to see where you are, we're going to start. I'll start here with Neffs. So, all right, that's the one we opened with about the thing about the stores. My guess is Swatch needs the money. They have total control and they're okay with cannibalizing their own icons. They're going to stores. It sounds to me like they really needed the traffic. Yes, that's the whole thing. And honestly, what is a Swatch icon at this, like in their mainline collection? Who cares anymore? It's because it's based off aspirational things. That's the new angle. Swatch formed as second watch. Hey, you already have a luxury watch. Get a fun watch. I think now it's inverted. Get a Swatch and then see if you want to move further up brand. I think that's what they're hoping. Making lifetime Swatch group customers, starting with this. And then there's just all the added gravy of everyone else who's already a watch collector, like many of you in the chat, who want to get this because it's fun, or you've never owned a Blancpain. I saw someone, I think on Tim Masso's Facebook group, who owns 3 Blancpains, and they went and bought one of these because the color was fun. So it works on all sorts of fronts. But I think for propping up the stores is the main reason why Swatch is doing it the way they're doing it, with a higher price point and continuing to tying into an even higher up there tier luxury brand and all the rest of it. Neff says, if there's some legacy benefit for them, then it's a bonus to Swatch. Absolutely. Ken says, if it's a marketing long game, I think more will end up wanting a Rolex. I mean, obviously, could this benefit other brands, other companies? Maybe Rolex, and that'd probably be the only one. It kind of depends. Like in the case of this with the 50 Fathoms, like if you did you'd have to do the research. So, but when people are spending thousands of dollars, they often will do research, kind of like, how we educate ourselves more when we buy a car than when we buy maybe a new brand of toothpaste, because what's the loss if you didn't like the taste of the toothpaste, you just throw it away, who cares? But with a car, it's kind of a big deal. So Rolex could benefit, for example, off of the 50 Fathoms, as noted. If someone's starting to go like to the websites and shop the pricing, they're like, wow, this 50 Fathoms, which I like because I've got the Swatch 50 Fathoms Scuba, that's a lot of fun. Oh gosh, it starts at about $15,000. Oh, look, Rolex is under 10 if you want to get it without a date. And then if you want to get it with a date, it's still cheaper. So it's like, I could see that. I don't think any other brands would really be able to, Rolex is its own weird beast though, because it's its own little, it's its own little hype machine at this point. So maybe Rolex. I don't think it helps any other companies though. Scotty says, Ken, I hope you're right. If I've raised them right, they will want Rolex. Neff says the 50 Fathoms is also enormous. Now, this is something where a lot of watch collectors are hoping, and I don't want to burst the bubble because I just don't think it happens. But some are hoping that this will be popular enough, these Swatch Scubas, that Blancpain is going to be like, okay, wow, look, there's now more interest in our brand. Let's finally make the 50 Fathoms wearable. You'd think they would finally do it if they were ever going to. I think in the world of Blancpain, they just say, you know what? If you think the 50 Fathoms regular is too big, buy a bathyscap. And if you think the bathyscap is like the size of these. The regular bathyscap is like 43 millimeter. And I think their logic is, if you don't like that, then buy the 38 millimeter bathyscap, which, okay, fair, I guess, fair enough. Here's the scenario where I think it changes this, Neff. I think if this does actually, like, if I'm wrong, especially if they get like over 10% surge in sales at dealers of Blancpains for 50 Fathoms, that might motivate them, because they might see enough, they might feel there's enough long-term demand that they'll go ahead and finally shrink that thing. But it's so tough. I know they, like, in limited editions and stuff, they've played with the sizing, is my understanding, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. DeRosa says the movement finishing on these real Blancpains doesn't look that great, especially at those prices. It's not like, it's a fair point. It's not like the step up with, like, how I feel you'll see with Glitchuto. I have to be careful because Glitchuto Original, for example, I don't believe does the hand engraved balance cock on all their watches. They do it on some of their watches. Yeah, it's still very industrial out of Blancpain. I would say though, I feel it's a notable step up over Omega. So, I mean, and part of it will be, it's weird because, like, you'll look and you'll see the rotor and you're like, it's a black media blasted rotor. It's like, well, the rotor is gold. I mean, you might question the finishing in that case, but the component quality is higher than just using a stainless steel rotor. So there's stuff like that going on with Blancpain, but it's not all super obvious when you look at it. Yeah, it's just not. It's a tool watch, luxury tool watch brand, so it's just not. It's not really known for the movement finishing side of it. And I do think they keep it pretty industrial looking, and that probably will be a turnoff to some people if the movement finishing is where they're really going to jump to. These at least are fun, with our inspirational sea slugs. Look at that little guy. He's the cutest thing on the screen watch. It's just one of those things. Tuna says, I'm not sure if the original System 51 models are selling in the kind of quantities that Swatch was expecting. It's been about a decade since they came out. They moved the pricing up a lot versus the quartz. So I think that's always been the biggest barrier. It just didn't get it cheap enough. Because, you can look and you can go, well, I mean, when it came out, I think the watch pricing was thought to be maybe around $150 or so. And it's interesting. I mean, it's cheap for a mechanical, but it's not the cheapest, right? I mean, Vostocks are available under $100, or they were before the war, with an in-house mechanical movement that could be serviced. So, I mean, it saves them on the labor assembly, but there are just other cheap competitors out there that exist in the mechanical space, especially at this point, as mechanical watches become more and more popular. The automation is the strength of it, but beyond that, most people on cheap watches don't service them at all. It doesn't. If the watch it's just cheap is cheap, and they'll throw it away when it breaks. So that's kind of where I think maybe they thought things were going to be in a different direction than how it played out. Zavis says 90% purchase is by resellers. I do think looking at not to be judgmental, but it'll be a little judgmental. Looking at one of the photos someone shared of the line was full of like teenagers. So it's one of two things. A bunch of teenagers are all of a sudden getting into watches, or a bunch of teenagers are trying to do a side hustle and flip these things on eBay real quick because they know that's what worked with the MoonSwatch. And I think it's the latter, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe they were MoonSwatch buyers and they're like, we loved it and we have $400 because we saved our allowance and we're ready to buy it. Or they could have jobs. They could have part-time jobs. Zavis also says, but who is really buying them for end use? Ultimately, I'm sure a lot of see, this would be, in so many ways, this would appeal to a lot of collectors that just want to have things that are like summer watches, for example. Like, take something like this. Ignore the Scuba no radiation throwback stuff. This sort of beige and orange. Like, how many of you in the chat? I'd be very interested. Or if you're watching the recording, feel free to comment. How many of you actually would buy a multi-$1,000 watch? I'll say $3,000. $3,000 watch in this color scheme. There are two types of people. Well, okay, three. I'll say there are three types of people that would do that. One, you love this color scheme. Two, you have so much money you don't care that the watch is $3,000. Or three, you're just really into collecting watches, and so you're at the point in your collection where the diversity of design mandates what you decide, not anything else. So basically, you have everything else that you already want. And as a collector, you're okay investing $3,000 into investing is not the right word, but putting $3,000 into a hobby because it's a hobby. Those are the three types of people that do that. This watch is situational in color scheme. Perfect for something like a Swatch thing, right? A few $100s, I could rationalize it. I wouldn't pay $5,000, $3,000. Honestly, I don't know if I could bring myself to pay $1,000 for a watch in this color scheme. Maybe, because I have 14 watches at this point. So it's getting to the point where things have to kind of start looking a little weird, or else my watches are going to look really samey. But, it's like, that orange one I could only wear in certain scenarios. I wouldn't wear it to work with a suit. I don't have any suits that are orange or go with orange. I don't know. I wear a lot of gray. Yeah, I wear a lot of gray. So you just maybe I could make it work. But so that's kind of where I think that comes in from. So Neff says, imagine if they start doing watches down market, like the Khaki Field Mechanical, who is going to spend $300 for a plastic quartz khaki when they could get the real one for a few bucks more. And that's where as funny as it would be to see them move all the way down this brand list. Yeah, I don't think they can go any. Here's my line. I think Rado and up would make sense. I think Union Glashütte and down doesn't. Now, Union Glashütte is not even traded there's no authorized dealer in the US for Union. So that one's a no, but Tissot and it's just too cheap of a price point at this point to make sense to Swatchify it. But maybe a Rado, maybe a Captain Cook, like taking one of their iconic ceramic watches and making it hey, you've looked at the ceramic Rado, Captain Cook. Now look at the bioceramic. See, it sells itself. The bioceramic Cook. That's what I'd call it. So that's where I think at best your dividing line's at Rado. Rado on up, they could possibly do. Maybe they stay more and Omega on up. If I were them, depending on if Blancpain does well, honestly, it wouldn't totally shock me if they tried to do a Swatch Breguet, a Swagay. I mean, maybe, but I think going back to Omega, and farming that catalog, I mean, there's a lot there that you could do. 300M Seamaster, do an Aquaterra version another year, do an old-fashioned 300, not the 300M. You do that. You know, you could do another chrono, and the MoonSwatch is obviously based off the MoonWatch, but they have other Speedmasters they could try and farm as well. I'd probably hit the Seamasters first, though, at this point. So, and then while they're not like big deals in the US, like the DeVille line is, I believe, really popular in Asia. So maybe there's enough potential there to do something like that. I don't know. That's just sort of where I would spitball it, however, in my opinion. So Neff says they can only go one direction, upmarket. That's true, but just bear in mind, everything is pretty much upmarket from Swatch. So it's just a question of where does it no longer make financial sense? Where is someone going to say, I can't have this, or I don't know if I want it yet. I like the look. I'll take it in plastic. Rado on up, I think, is the safe. I think that's the line. And Neff says they're going to run out of icons rapidly. I can't think of another Swatch at or near the level of the 50 Fathoms. A fair point, Neff. However, there's one other thing that we haven't discussed that they can do, and they have been doing to a very, very limited degree. Just do new iterations of these icons. And that partway one I mean is that stupid seconds hand dipped in gold or whatever, the little moonshine gold thing that they did. That, as goofy as it is, and then they have the strawberry version, and let's set aside and the whole, oh my God, let's not talk about the storytelling about how they only make it under the light of the full moon, like it's like werewolf stuff. Let's set that craziness aside. The idea of taking the MoonSwatch and just turning out more colors. Where's our Alpha Centauri version? Why do we have to stay in the solar system? What? Taking the 50 Fathoms and say, all right, we did stuff based off of the 5 oceans. Now we're going to do more colorways based off the 7 seas. They can just keep changing the colors of these things, or doing cutesy stuff like let's gold dip things and platinum dip things and all of that. That's what they could also do. They don't have to constantly change and release a whole new model look. They can keep the same case structure and just change the hands and stuff around. So I think we'll see a lot of that too. But they have a few more icons out of Omega alone that they can go. The Seamaster is begging for an iteration. I think they just wanted to give Omega a break and thought they'd give it a try on Blancpain first. So we'll see them. Let's see. Ken says, and also the MoonSwatch was released at the height of the watch market. Now one can argue it's at a 5-year low. Sure, but as long as the pricing is essentially disposable pricing, and and I haven't talked about the angle on the consumer yet, but we could have that debate at where is that line drawn? Obviously, it's drawn differently for every individual, but so far they're keeping it under 500. For a lot of people, even if they're like concerned about the economy, I know plenty of at least in the collector space, I know plenty of watch collectors who, even they mostly stay at the quote unquote, like they don't go into high end luxury. To them, $500 is throwaway money. They throw that away on watches all the time because they have no assumption of any retention and value on it. So they'll just be like, yeah, I just want another, y'all know the sort. They're the ones that buy like all the micro brands that come out and they give them a try because it's like, well, it's under $1,000. Why not? Why not? I mean, I don't work that way, but a lot of people do. So in this part of the market, I'm not going to say it's recession proof, but it's far more resilient than than people who are buying Nautiluses and GMT Master 2s. I mean, that's a very different price tier. So Peter, welcome to the live stream, Peter. I'm happy for increased exposures to the 50 Fathoms line. That's about it. Okay, well, and maybe it will pay dividends. I'm skeptical, but for them, I think it's going to help Swatch for more than Blancpain, but maybe it will. Peter also says the Submariner at retail at an AD is a great price. The prices get into the 15, 16, 17,000 or more, and it starts to get stupid. Yeah, that's where I've been on a list for a while, a few months now for a sub. And I'm not looking secondhand on it because they go for more secondhand. Whereas I would look secondhand or gray for a Blancpain, you can get them for less. And in fact, I did look at Blancpains. You can save quite a bit on Blancpain secondhand. So as I'll throw it back up here, but as the watch charts information shows you market price on 50 Fathoms is thousands under what they retail for. So if you're actually curious about a quote unquote real 50 Fathoms, definitely take a look. There are a lot of options out there, and then the model's been around for a long time. So kind of like the MoonWatch, you can really go around and shop and see a lot of different sort of things available. So Neff says it's more expensive than the MoonSwatch, but it's also quite large at 43.5 millimeters. That'll also limit its audience. And Ken agrees, for example, that a lot of women will not buy this. That's a fair point. Again, using the same mold meant just doing the one size. I think it's more a convenience factor. But that's another thing where we get back to how many icons could they do? They could always just come out with a smaller version. Remember, the Swatch did that with the Murph, right? What was the big complaint about Hamilton's the Murph? Why is it so big? This watch is too large. I can't wear it. So they came out with a smaller version of the Murph. It's like years later, it's like, look, this new and my understanding is done well. So, they could pull a strategy like that. Zavish said, also because Blancpain said there will never be a quartz. Yeah. I think they're claiming that as the reason why they went System 51. Maybe it's true. I'm skeptical that because the out is so easy. That's why I can't get around it. It's not a Blancpain watch. It's a Swatch watch. It's a Swatch watch. Blancpain would be able to argue. I don't even think it's an argument. I think they'd be able to say, we tilly ho ho. Well, I guess they don't say tilly ho ho because they're not British, but they wouldn't be sitting there saying, having to explain that they never put out a quartz watch and then someone's waving this, I was going to load back up one of these. Someone's sitting there waving this orange watch in their face going, yes, you did. Yes, you did. No one's going to buy that. No one's going to believe it. They're going to know that it's a Swatch. But I don't know. I mean, I could see the concern. Maybe they stressed it because it's like, well, you're putting Blancpain's name at the very top of the dial and Swatch is down below it. There's a lot of co-branding. So maybe it was a motivating factor. It's a good excuse regardless. It's a good excuse. I don't think it was a bad move to make this mechanical. I think it plays to a lot of good reasons to go ahead and do it. I just think it's more useful than the whole Blancpain doesn't do quartz angle to say it gives us a good excuse to make this watch $400, which is a lot of money for a Swatch, a lot of money. And then that means they don't have to make as many because they don't need to sell as many to make the same amount of money they made on the MoonSwatch. That's where I think the strength of it is. Let's see. What other things? Let's see. Tuna agrees that 43.5 millimeters will put many purchasers off. I mean, I can tell you, though, that it's smaller than what the actual 50 Fathoms would be. So, saying something about this gap. Underhay says, Swatch long jeans still say Vita. Maybe not for number 3. That might be number 6 or 7 in the list. But Peter says, I just bought my wife the white rubber loomed PRX for her birthday early October. I continue to blame you for my family's PRX obsession from showing the PRX on here years ago. I don't think I hold culpability for that. Well, maybe I do if I'm being blamed. Well, I apologize. I did have my own PRX. Actually, I let that go after my 2022 State of the Collection. But that is that the one with the full loom dial. That is a really slick. I think Patrick with Pocket Watch Time has one of those and did a review of it. Very slick looking watch with the loom. So I'm glad it came out after I had mine. So, because I'm telling myself I'm not buying another PRX, but you never know. Thanks for stopping in, Neff. Good to see you. Tuna says Swatch Tissot tradition. Okay. Again, I'm drawing my line at Rado. I don't think it makes sense to go below Rado on the price tier. And Zavis says, yes, absolutely. He agrees. It is Swatch. I mean, how could we not agree? But the final thing I was going to touch on real quick, and there's been so much discussion. We've gone longer than I planned. But so what's the impact for the consumer? Ultimately, it's hard. The only thing I can criticize, I feel I can criticize for the consumer is that it's a $400 watch. That is a lot of money for what this is. And that's just, but the nice thing is the price is transparent. So it's something that everyone's going to need to ask themselves. Are you willing to pay the delta? You're paying the delta for two things. You're paying a delta, a price increase above the norm is what I mean by that, on two sides of this. One, of course, is the branding. We saw this with Omega and MoonSwatch. It went up basically $100 more than what you would otherwise be getting with a Bioceramic quartz watch out of Swatch. And we're seeing this here as well, where Blancpain's going to add a certain amount of money because its name is on the dial. And I felt I knew going in, it was going to add at least $100. Then you've got the fact that's the System 51. So because it's a mechanical movement, that also adds a price because Swatch charges more for the System 51 watches than they do for the quartz watches. Now, I do think this would probably have been closer to 300 rather than 400, just adjusting for the movement. Maybe it'd been 350. So I think they're building in, there's cushion here. I think they're putting in more profit motive than they did on the MoonSwatch. But I think a lot of people, especially if you handle the MoonSwatch, you kind of know what you're getting at this point. You're a lot more people now than they were a year ago are familiar with Bioceramic and how it's plastic and how it feels. They have had plenty of opportunity to see about the robustness of the MoonSwatches. A lot of people have complained about breaks. Granted, that might have been part of the reason they went with this approach with doing a dive watch is to avoid the issues with the chronograph. So those aspects as well. They're trying some different things here with, being able to have loom, going ahead and doing a NATO strap because there were a lot of complaints about the Velcro MoonSwatch straps. So by and large, I think you know what you're getting into at this stage. So the only question to me is if you're okay and comfortable with the price. That's the only real negative I view from a consumer angle. I would say I'm still critical of them not selling it online. I think it undermines the argument. And I'm not saying they're making the argument, but I've seen some of their supporters or people who are fans or more sympathetic to this watch than more against the watch have said in comment sections like on Fratello and stuff, is that this lets more people experience a watch they couldn't otherwise afford. Yes, but if that was really the motive, this should have been available online, and the MoonSwatch should be available online. If you really want to get watches into the hands if that's Swatch's goal, this is not the selling strategy to do it. Putting it behind a brick and mortar wall, a literal brick wall, especially when they don't even put it in all the stores they sell Swatches at. But as I already talked about, Swatch is more concerned about, in my view, is more concerned about propping up their retail outlets and making them profitable again than they are about actually getting a watch on every wrist. So knowing that, no, it's not the most pro-consumer thing, but this is totally to be expected given what they've done with the MoonSwatch. So again, you know what you're getting into. You're either in range or not. My advice to folks would be to not buy this at an inflated price off of eBay. This is not going to be a long-term investment watch in any way. Again, and let me declare I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is giving you financial or investment advice. But we saw, while the MoonSwatches might still trade for more online than they do at retail, that is still mostly accommodating the fact that some people just cannot physically reasonably get there. And it doesn't make financial sense for them to drive and pick one up and get a hotel room. They'd rather just pay that little bit of premium online. I think that's kind of where that pricing by and large is settled. I think this is going to settle even faster. $400 is going to stop a lot of people from picking this up to gamble on as a flip anyway. I think some are doing it today. I think we're always going to see that at the day one launch of any Swatch collab, but for the foreseeable future. But overall, I think it's fine. If you like it, they're fun. The colors are fun. There's a lot about it just from in the true sort of Swatch tradition of having a second watch, going with these sort of goofier colors. Some of them look really attractive to me. So, as long as you know what you're going and getting in terms of it being plastic and all of that, I don't really see a downside to it. So it's fine. It's fine. But anyway, that is all I had for today's live stream. We did run a little bit long, but there was a lot to talk about. Thank you, everyone who was actually able to show up live. Made chat a lot of fun. It gives me something to play off of, especially when I don't have other people on to talk to. So, because me talking into the screen gets a very I do actually get tired of hearing the sound of my own voice, believe it. Despite all the podcasting and stuff I do get tired of it. So I do appreciate that. Thank you all for engaging with it. If you have thoughts on the watch, feel free, if you're watching the recording, to comment in the comment section. I do go and read those. All my plugs are in there. I'm not going to plug anything else. It's time for me to go pick up lunch. So I hope you all have a really good weekend. I don't know what next week's topic will be, but I will plan to do another one on Saturday. So take care, everybody, and I hope you have a really good time.